The Outsiders Summit is a program that Soraya from All the Elements and myself created in order to bring community group leaders together in one place to discuss some of the issues, celebrate some of the successes, and talk about ways forward for people of colour in the outdoors. We've brought people from swimming, trail running, hiking, cycling and climbing, all leaders in the conversation in their particular disciplines. And what we thought we'd do is get all of those leaders trying different sports so that they can take the joy that they've got out of trying those new sports back to their own communities. The last year or two has seen a number of new community groups spring up around the country. A lot of these things have been created out of necessity. It's difficult though, right? If you stick your head above the parapet, you're open to a whole heap of abuse. A lot of the groups operate in silos, so running communities will talk to lots of other running communities, but yet they're facing similar issues as climbing communities or swimming communities. So getting people together allows people to discuss some of those challenges and hopefully have new ways of thinking.
I only met Jo a couple of months ago and I just thought she's somebody I'm going to grab.
She was like, we're going to do something.
One of the biggest problems we face in having this conversation is that people don't understand the topics. By bringing in the national governing bodies, Swim England, mountain training and British cycling, they can see firsthand people who are on the street, people who have communities that they can learn from. We wanted to hear their strategies for diversity and inclusion so that we could stress test them, so that we could say, look, this sounds good on paper, but the implementation may not work because of X, Y, and Z. And I think they've found that very useful. What's really encouraging is that brands and organisations are starting to understand some of the barriers, often invisible barriers, that our communities face. What shows me that there is hope in moving this conversation forward is when brands like Patagonia are able to help fund the Outsiders Summit, and organisations like HF Holidays are going to give us accommodation and food and welcome us and say, come and enjoy our space. That really does make me feel hopeful that people are listening and people honestly want to try and make a difference.
So, are we ready at the back for the meeting to commence? And I will introduce myself, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Helen Bowden, and I have the privilege and pleasure of being president of HF Holidays. Before we get down to full business, on behalf of the HF team, and I'm sure all of you, both here in the hall and at home, I want to acknowledge the current events in Ukraine and express our collective sympathy for all those suffering in the war. I think you'll agree it certainly puts our challenges into perspective. And against that sombre background, may I welcome you to the 108th Annual General Meeting of HF Holidays, which today is a hybrid meeting with 70 members registered to join us in person and 400 registered to join virtually. And it really is great to see so many of our members today in the Radlett Centre, notwithstanding the video not working. We hope that this hybrid format will enable as many of our members as possible to join us in the manner which suits their circumstances. Many of you have told us you prefer the convenience of virtual attendance, but we're mindful too of those members who like to attend a meeting in person. Hopefully, we can offer you the best of both worlds. But as this is our first foray into the hybrid format, please bear with us if there are any glitches. I'd like to inform you this meeting is being recorded and will be made available to view on the website in due course. Just to formally note that HF Holidays is registered under the Cooperative and Community Benefits Societies Act 2014, and notice of the AGM was given in February 2020. Now, I've completed the formal opening, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the whole HF team for getting our organisation through such an intensely difficult period, which, as the war in Ukraine shows, is not over yet. I've been fortunate enough to go on several HF holidays over the past 2 years, and despite the frustrations of COVID measures, supply problems, and acute staff shortages, they were still wonderful HF experiences. Since the pandemic started, our staff has worked incredibly hard with good humour, resilience and care. They've adapted to every situation that was thrown at them. And I want to formally record our appreciation of their efforts to the teams and leaders in our houses and in our offices. We are very lucky to have you. So during this meeting, you'll hear from the presenters seated on the stage: Malcolm Oliver, Chair of HF Holidays Board; Mark Hoffman, Vice Chair; Elaine Barclay, Chair of the People Committee; David Harrington, CEO, and of course me, Helen Bowden. I'd also like to introduce some of our directors and senior management team members who are with us at the Radlett Centre today. They're sitting here in the right front row in the dark, trying to avoid it all, but I'd like to invite them to stand up so that I can introduce them. Please welcome directors Richard Drury, Rebecca Horlock. Good idea if we switch on the lights so you can see them. Rebecca Horlock, Linda Hayden, Stephen Guile, and Leslie Brantingham. So I hope that both here and on the camera you can see these are our directors. I'd also like to introduce Justine Gibbs, our Head of Finance, and Nikki Spohr, who is our audit partner from White Hart Associates London Limited. Thank you very much. You can sit down now. The full results of your voting during this AGM will be given at the end of the meeting and will be ratified by Sarah Kuchera, Head of Governance and Society Secretary of HF Holidays. Are you here, Sarah? Don't worry, she's probably lurking in the wings. And whilst David is scrutinising the votes, David Harrington, our Chief Executive, will update us on how HF Holidays has weathered the COVID storm and is actually poised for growth. On Wednesday, the 30th of March, we held the second of our Q&A seminars, and thank you to all our members who submitted questions related to the operations, strategy or business of HF Holidays and joined the Q&A webinar. A recording of that webinar will be available for all to listen to on the website. We also invited members to submit questions relating specifically to the 2022 AGM items detailed in the agenda which you received. Once again, thank you to the members who took the time to submit a question. Our teams have responded to all the questions submitted and will try and share the responses and respond to new questions received during the meeting and from our in-person attendees after Agenda Item 6, the presentation of the annual report. If there are any questions which we do not manage to answer in the time frame for our AGM or have not been covered by either the Q&A webinar or during the AGM, we will respond after this AGM. And the other important thing right now is if any of our virtual attendees are having any issues technically, please feel free to press the help button on your screen. Our provider StreamGo is available all throughout the meeting and to assist you in any way if you need help. For any IT challenges in the auditorium, we've both our IT support manager, Roberto Massaro, and our StreamGo partners. So, Agenda Item 2, as mentioned earlier, members have been invited to submit questions both for the member Q&A webinar and in relation to the 2022 AGM agenda items. A recording of the Q&A webinar will be available on the website, and any unanswered AGM agenda item questions will be responded to after the AGM. I'm delighted to confirm that we are quorate, and to share that in line with the Society's Rule 2011, we have enough members confirmed viewing the meeting from the comfort of their homes today or with us in person from the Radlett Centre. Now, we're going to do a test vote, and this is genuinely the first time the hybrid system will be tested. If you joined online for the last 2 years, you'll know there's a press button, but you here will have to put your hands up, so there'll be a bit of energy needed to be used. We think it's a good idea to have a practice. So here's a nice neutral question to allow you to get started. Who is in favour of the colour of my jumper? And this is not personal. If you hate it, you don't have to worry. For the virtual attendees, please look at your screen and vote for this jumper colour, against it, or abstain. My husband will be abstaining. For those in the Radlett Centre, we have two of our wonderful leaders, Linda Dvorsky and Madeleine Goudelet, and our Membership Services Manager, Jackie Marackley, as our tellers who will count your votes. So here in the hall, please raise your hands if you like the colour of my jersey. Yes, it all comes out now, doesn't it? And we've got to let our tellers have the time to count. Yes, it does. Right, you don't have to tell us yet, it's meant to be a secret ballot. It's all right, but the point is, this is a practice. So who dares to be against the colour of this jumper? Well done, that man. So can you count the against? Thank you. And who's abstaining? Oh, very wise. Keeping on the right side of the president. Lovely. So the online voting, thank you very much, will end in 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The voting for this practice vote is now closed. And as we go through the voting, this is the system we'll use. And of course, it is interesting that actually counting arms up in a room takes longer than you think. But thank you very much to our tellers. We'll come back to you soon. So the first item proper on the agenda to put to the members' vote is to confirm the minutes of the 107th Annual General Meeting held on the 10th of April 2021. For the virtual attendees, please look at your screen now and vote for, against or abstain. For those in the Radlett Centre, first raise your hands in support of this motion, approving the minutes. And they need to be counted. And right at the top. Great, thank you. Those against? Well, that was short. And those abstaining? Some abstentions here, people who probably weren't at the last meeting. And one here. And for online voting, we'll end in 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The voting for that is now closed. It should be noted there are no member or board motions to consider at this meeting, which for me in this role is genuinely a first, which means we can move on to the key points from our annual report and accounts relating to the year ended the 31st of October 2021. And this will be presented by Malcolm Oliver, Chair, and Mark Hoffman, Vice Chair. Firstly, you, Malcolm.
Good afternoon, everybody, and let me add my welcome to that from Helen. This is the last time I'm going to be standing here before you. You'll be very pleased to know, having spent 6 years on the board, 2.5 years privileged to serve you as chair. It's been a hugely challenging, but also a very frustrating year for me, for my colleagues on the board, and for the whole of our team, as we've had to concentrate on running the business in an environment of huge unknowns and absolutely constant change. I actually helped develop our first 5-year strategy. I saw that reflected in the consistent growth in our business over that period, in the growth of our surplus, and in major issues such as the very necessary refurbishment of an estate that had been allowed to get quite tired. COVID slammed the brakes on. We've had to pause many programs because we just had no idea really on how long the pandemic would impact just doing our job and trading. I actually think this year has been harder to manage, as changing regulation has meant constantly revisiting how we did things to keep everybody both happy and safe, whilst also coping with the same things as the whole of the rest of the travel industry, including lack of staff and lack of consistent supplies, even laundry. Have we done okay? Well, we lost the whole of our abroad and some 50% of our UK business. But what, for me, we did achieve is summed up by, first, a larger competitor actually saying that they had, despite COVID, managed 84 departures with some 4,000 guests. Whereas your society managed to operate about 2,650 holidays with 32,500 guests, partly because of our unique mix of UK and overseas holidays. Secondly, there is an independent industry standards score which monitors loyalty and how likely guests are to recommend us to others. A score above 50 is deemed excellent. HF came out with 61. Then, notwithstanding everything that was going on, your feedback scores showed similar results to 2019, despite all the aggro of COVID. Next, as you'll hear in a minute, we hugely reduced our deficit compared to last year, despite still only having about a quarter of our turnover. And lastly, when I have talked to others, including our bank and our auditors, I get the response that we have done pretty well compared to our competitors and the overall situation in the travel industry nationally. Now, I, like many of you, have suffered from cancellations and changes. I did actually get to Peveril of the Peak for New Year to a tremendous atmosphere created by the staff and by the fellow guests with really excellently prepared and presented food. At 7 p.m. on New Year's Eve, the Cayley band rang in to say one of their number had tested positive. But of course, the leaders inevitably came up with quizzes, and the tutor on the singing break stepped into the breach, and we even danced the New Year in, true HF style. You know that when we've done something like that, what we've achieved overall has been through the sheer hard work and cooperation of the whole HF team. Many have gone the extra mile, And our volunteer leaders and staff, have stepped in doing extra things where required, even serving at table. With leaders doing that, and if I was asked to do it, it would be quite dangerous, I think. I just seriously want to record our thanks to all of you, and particularly to the leadership of David here, David Harrington, our CEO, in bringing us through this critical year, this awful year. We're not out of the woods yet, are we? 2019 was our last proper year of trading, and as I stand here, we are already over a quarter of the way through our next financial year. We have successfully restarted European holidays with over 250 people travelling by the end of February. And in the UK, guest volumes are nearly 40% up on 2019. I believe that we have weathered the worst of the storm, showed that we are resilient and ready to come back to growth. Now, HF has, I think, rarely ever experienced such a prolonged period of risk from outside events. So the whole area of governance and risk has never been more important. There is a section in our annual report on the subject, but you will see that we reorganized our committee structure to parallel the objectives in our strategy and ensure that we were all working to the same priorities. We also had an audit and risk committee, independent of myself and also of David, our CEO. The risks were reviewed at every level, and finally with the full board. At such a time, there cannot be an absence of risk, but careful scrutiny ensured that we balance measures in the best way possible to ensure the sustainability of your society. Turning to our financial performance, last year we told you that the cost of operating without any trading resulted in a £4.6 million loss, offset by the government's COVID business interruption loan of £3.75 million. This year we achieved a major improvement with a reduced deficit of just £384,000, including some one-off write-offs and provisions of £300,000. That is no mean feat, given the Auditors' comments at note 2.2 about the global impact of the pandemic on travel industry as a whole. They concluded that we remained a going concern through having taken advantage of all possible in-year government support to the tune of £1.95 million, and also implementing a substantial range of measures to reduce our costs. Now, those included pausing many capital expenditure projects, including things that I know you all hold dear, including things like e-vehicle charging. Nevertheless, your board is very clear that we must grow out of this pandemic rather than just hunker down and repay government debt over the next 5 years. As part of that commitment to growth, one project we did not pause was the replacement of our booking system. It introduces enterprise-wide savings and removes the barriers to improving our web presence and the guest journey. Whilst the new system is working, we were let down, I'm afraid, by the people who provided the web front end. And I really apologize for the problems that's caused. The residual value of our old system on our books was just over 200,000, which is therefore written off. We've also made a provision of nearly 100,000 to cover any matters exposed in our transfer to the new system. And that sounds a larger sum, but it's the accumulation of a huge number of many small differences between our old system and the main accounts over a decade and more. So it is not an unreasonable figure. And it actually reflects the situation that the new, more integrated system is definitely designed to prevent in the future. This year, we again avoided using all the financial instruments that were available to us, including our overdraft facility. It was important to retain a buffer to cope with the totally unknown. not least the necessary response, for example, to the Omicron variant that popped up just as we thought we were out of the mire. It could really all have been so much worse. The other exceptional item in the accounts is that from exiting Beth Gellert last year, when we didn't get the National Trust's head office agreement to proposals that we had previously worked hard on and agreed with their Welsh region to extend the house to make it more profitable to operate. As a result of that, we have to write off the residual capital value of mainly fixtures and fittings in the books to the sum of 145,000. And when you take into account the exceptional items which have contributed to the 384,000 deficit shown on the accounts and notionally strip them out, the real trading performance shows a loss of only about 84,000 despite losing all our abroad and a half of our UK business through COVID. So how have we achieved this? Well, the pressures on staffing within the industry have resulted in inflation in both wages and in the cost of food and other supplies. We're seeing it at home as well, aren't we? Against that, the demand to get back to the great outdoors has really helped reduce the need for discounting, and we have achieved hugely higher than normal fill rates with a lesser drop in revenues compared to the level of loss covered by COVID. Now, you will see in the accounts that our turnover increased by some 3 million, from 13 million to 16 million, but we cut our expenditure. Now, we believe that the unique mix that HF has of a 50-50 mix of UK and overseas business has again really served us well, just as our overseas element saved us in the era of foot and mouth. There is no doubt that we could have done better without the staffing crisis across the industry. Operating a tight ship leaves you vulnerable to those last-minute issues which initially resulted in house closures at very short notice. And David will tell you that we have operated a capping system at a small number of our houses to prevent disappointing guests at the last minute. There are the other normal adjustments around. Firstly, the routine revaluation of the estate, a 323,000 gain. And then in this COVID year, we made a book loss of 37,000 revaluation on foreign exchange that we held. That's termed fair movement of financial instruments in the first page of the accounts. Normally we hedge by buying foreign exchange as we price overseas holidays, but clearly with no trading there, that wasn't a sensible approach. Now, I always feel a need to put in-year performance into its wider context. And this slide shows the cash in the bank, the red line, and the current surplus or deficit. Now, I've talked about the fact that before our 5-year strategy, we just bumped along the bottom. And the 5-year strategy to 2020 saw us building improvement while also investing in the estate. Clearly, there is no questioning the impact of COVID, a real train crash. But you will see on the graph there that we have recovered to a more normal position. And I would suggest that with the investment program that I'm going to talk about in a minute, we are well set to reassert growth strategies over the next years to get us out of the crisis. Now, Mark and David will be talking in detail about the progress with our Building the Tomorrow strategy and our other developments. As I've said, some things had to be paused with the financial situation around us, but a huge amount of detailed planning has still been carried out, not least in the areas of improving profitability, protecting and growing our assets, and in introducing smarter processes and therefore reducing costs. Most actions should have gone unnoticed, but I will just mention a couple. In the area of food, you will have seen the move to pre-printed menus. Now, I've heard some talk about, oh yes, this is HF cutting back. I want to assure you that is not the aim or the case. COVID meant preventing crowding round our traditional menu board in reception. But we also needed a more robust system to cater for often very last-minute staff shortages on the day of the meal, say. And problems with supply too. Contractors just saying, we don't have a lorry to deliver you your food. And also, just to add grist to the mill, there are new regulations around managing allergies and also in declaring calorie management. And you'll see on the slide here that the next generation of menus from the 4th of April will include calorie details. And eat your pork pie at your peril. It's just one example that I quote where something seemingly quite simple required quite careful professional thought and actually very prompt action. And almost every area of how we have done business has been impacted in some way, and the fact that most changes have not been visible to guests is an accolade in itself. There is no aim to cut back on quality, nor the value for money, and that is stuff that we believe is absolutely critical to what your society offers you as members and guests. Turning to product, our field advisors did a really fantastic job creating Tread Lightly, and we developed more options this year to cater for COVID restrictions and people's demand. Benchmarking our offerings against other suppliers shows that we are offering excellent value for money. Evolving our product to meet the circumstances and to give you a safe and rich offering is key, and we are pledged to continuing that development as we move forward in our growth plans. And I'd like to move on to sharing with you our investment plans. Your board believes that this next 5 years cannot just be about earning £835 a year to repay the government's COVID business interruption loan. The risks of just hunkering down whilst competitors develop with the benefit of external investment are hugely greater for us than adopting a growth strategy agenda for your society. We have identified something like £14 million of investment that HF needs over this 5-year period. And Mark will talk to you in a moment about our plans for Church Stretton, for Peveril of the Peak, and for the refurbishment of our other houses. These are issues that can't just keep being kicked down the road. There is also a continuing need to provide for the evolution of our IT and for the wider infrastructure to maintain our profitability, our efficiency, and to position us for growth. Now that we are now trading effectively, I think we are in a position to seek further investment to fund that growth. And clearly, the more funds we attract, the quicker things can be implemented. HF is unique in so many ways. Our cooperative status is core to our values. There is no outside organisation taking profit from your society in good times, but it also means there is no one sitting in the wings to inject funds at times of crisis. We rely on you, our owners, in all respects, and we can only get funding to develop in 4 ways without resorting to added borrowing. Crucially, we must provide the holidays you want to go on. We must deliver what you want as efficiently as possible and carry on offering great value for money. Next, we are really blessed when people leave a bequest to the society in their wills. And here I must thank those responsible for the £23,000 of donations that we have received in this way this year. It really is very much appreciated that many who have enjoyed travelling with HF then remember the organisation in this way. And even the smallest of thoughts in that regard from any of you will always be welcomed. Another option not taken lightly is to sell a house to use the funds to accelerating getting other places up to the standard you say you want. And you will have seen that we have decided to sell just one in this exceptional time, Lulworth, based upon its value compared to its contribution to our overall surplus. And finally, we gain funds from you who invest in our society, either at the minimum threshold to enjoy member benefits or to then add even further to your investment. Now, we have been really pleased to welcome 2,361 new members in 2021. That compares to 1,512 in 2020, a funny old year, and 2,237 in 2019. Given COVID, we actually feel that's a sign that we have happy customers. And that fact is also reflected in the fact that 98% of our guests have said they will book again. And also, we retained the Which Award for escorted tours this year. So all very much positives. Now, what you see from this slide, this triangle breakdown of our membership, is that in common with the situation throughout our history, a relatively few people contribute significant sums to the benefit of us all who actually enjoy the HF. Some 1% of you invest about a third of the capital that goes into developing facilities. And the 7% who are investment members are responsible for 2/3 of the capital. The remaining third of our investments are mostly provided by members at or around the present minimum of £100. But there are also 28% of our members who, through their loyalty over time, have contributed less than the present membership fee, but currently still enjoy all the member benefits. Bluntly, we cannot do all the things you would like, from super accommodation to e-charging and other green objectives, without the necessary funding. The more investment, the faster we can deliver. So where do we go from here? Now, a member in this audience proposed that we should raise the minimum membership fee to £150. And that was endorsed by over 60% of you who replied to the membership survey. However, the board has taken the decision not lightly. It's chosen not to take up that opportunity this year. Instead, we're asking for a much wider contribution to your society. First, by keeping the membership fee at a minimum of £100, we must actively ask many more of our non-member guests to join the society. We really must be better at explaining what a good deal it is. We will also ask those of you loyal members with a shareholding below the present £100 minimum to consider adding to your investment, taking the cooperative values of our organisation into account and noting the benefits that you all presently enjoy. And likewise, we would like to ask all of you to consider whether you might add to your investment. The £50 a head proposed as an increase to the minimum holding would give us over £2 million. 10% of our membership investing an average of £3,000 each would cover the whole of our investment programme. We will also introduce an additional tier to our membership, one above £3,000. And that follows the membership survey result that showed that many of you wish to support your society to a higher level. And finally, the board has agreed that the upper limit on the investment that you can make to the society will be increased to the statutory maximum of 100,000. And that's up from the artificial ceiling we chose to put in before. Now, you'll see on the slide that we're about to send out a leaflet that will cover those sorts of issues and seek your support. There is one further way in which you can help your society, and that is through volunteering your time. First, our hugely valued field advisors and leaders always go that extra mile to suss out special places and then take you to them, adding to your enjoyment. We need to maintain that key element of our ethos. It will not always be easy as we battle with new regulations, not least into EU countries post-Brexit. But we do rely on your help. And I hope you feel that we properly recognise the contribution that you make. The other requirement for volunteers with a strong commitment to the ethos and values of HF is to provide a talented and diverse board. They need the time, skills, and experience to help provide the strategic direction your society needs to succeed in this hugely challenging and competitive industry. And I'd really like to thank all those who put themselves forward for election this year and extend a warm welcome to those who were elected. As we move into this next year, I would just ask all of you to think whether you or someone you know has a contribution to make. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you feel I've given you a comprehensive overview of the route travelled this year and an insight as to how we need to invest to grow and how you might be part of that. We have only got where we are because of having got into a sound position immediately before COVID and by dint of the whole HF team pulling together to fight whatever has been thrown at them. Our staff have really coped with those challenges, and I, again, follow Helen in just wanting to record all your thanks for the efforts they've made. It's been truly excellent to receive a huge number of accolades from you, our guests, as to what they have achieved. There were many bumps in the road. But here we are again with holidays opening up. I truly believe that this is really the time to return to our strategy, to build our tomorrow with our guests at our centre, and to invest in your society to support its continued growth. And I repeat my request for your help in that regard. And with that, I would like to propose you vote to adopt our annual report, accounts, and auditors report, and pass you to Mark Hoffman, our Vice Chair of the Board, to talk more about our strategy and our achievements to date and the way ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Malcolm. And hello, everyone. I'm Mark Hoffman. I was elected to the board in 2020. I'm currently Vice Chair of the board. I'm Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee and a member of the Product Committee. I'm also a leader. Malcolm has set out the financial and other challenges that we faced in 2021. But it's now time to look forward to our future. With this in mind, what have you, our members, been telling us? And how has this informed the board's thinking, its focus, and its priorities? Your board, when working through the many difficult decisions that needed to be taken this past year, did not do so in isolation. We were helped immensely by the input of members. And this came in three forms. Firstly, a member survey was undertaken in July 2021. Secondly, member and guest feedback from our holidays was analysed in detail. And finally, there's been a wealth of feedback from leaders who are at the sharp end and have the most contact with guests. As a leader myself, I've had the opportunity to meet many members and guests over the past year. Indeed, whilst I usually like to fly under the radar, I have found that once word gets out, as it inevitably does, that I am a board member, I become very popular. And almost everyone wants to talk to me to share their thoughts and views on all things HF. And there I was, thinking it was my sparkling personality and wit that attracted so much attention. Perhaps I should listen to my wife Sue more often. But seriously, the passion and commitment of members to the future of HF is crystal clear, and feedback is a privilege to receive. All thoughts, suggestions, whether positive or negative, are most welcome. Where action is required and be quickly delivered, it is addressed. Where suggestions relate to longer-term decisions, then they are added to the mix. And that leads me neatly onto the member survey. The survey was sent out by email to over 25,000 of our members in July of last year. And it was intended to help us understand better what type of organisation members want HF to be in the future. What motivated them to become members, and where they believe we should focus our future investment. Some of you will recall that we set out our 5-year strategy for our society at our last AGM, and we wanted to make sure that it was aligned with our members' wishes. We had almost 5,700 responses, which is a 22% response rate. Now, this in itself is a great result and a reflection of our members' level of engagement in the society. And thank you to everyone who responded to the survey. As with all surveys, we know that we weren't able to reach everyone. We also recognise that, as in every organisation, some members are more active than others, and that those who respond are generally those who feel more passionately. But that being said, whilst a diversity of views were expressed, strong and consistent themes emerged. As you can see from the bar chart, the majority of responses to the survey, in fact some 59%, were from those who have been members for less than 10 years. One message that stands out from the survey is that members are forward-thinking and looking to a future that embraces change, whilst at the same time protecting both the future of the society and its values. It was also reassuring to hear that members are supportive and appreciative of the work of their board and the HF senior management team led by David Harrington. What I'd like to do now is pick out the key priorities for action emerging from the survey and focus on how your board is responding. You said, we listened. The top priority for members is investing in maintaining and improving our UK country houses to a standard that you expect and that helps deliver you a great guest experience. 93% saw this as either very important or important. Whilst improvements have been carried out at a number of our houses, we know that there is still much work to be done. As Malcolm said, the board has identified some £14 million of investment that HF needs to make over the next 5 years across the estate. This includes a number of major projects. Firstly, the complete refurbishment of Longmynd House in Church Stretton, something we knew was needed when we bought it 10 years ago in 2012. We presently plan to close the house this coming winter to carry out phase 1, in which we'll invest about £1 million to remedy problems of water ingress by replacing all the windows and replacing the external rendering, and also carrying out essential health and safety work to bring things up to the latest standards, which is something we do when carrying out refurbishment work at all our houses. Phase 2, which we hope to be able to carry out in 2023-2024, will see a further £4 to £5 million spent to deliver a total upgrade of Longmynd House. A hidden gem, this house is hugely popular and makes a substantial contribution to our surplus. But sadly, regularly attracts complaints about its standard of presentation and facilities. With investment, it will take its rightful place as one of the jewels in HF's crown. Secondly, completing the purchase of Peveril of the Peak in Dovedale, which we currently lease with an option to buy. Another of our most popular and profitable locations. Its purchase and refurbishment will cost another £3.2 million, which, without doubt, will add another jewel to the crown. Achieving this as soon as we can is also beneficial to our balance sheet. The business case is clear. Thirdly, is the completion of our estate refurbishment programme, finishing the work we started in the previous 5-year strategy, but also introducing green and other sustainability policies, something our members hold dear and have asked us to prioritise. We're already actively working on this and have recently secured the support of a specialist sustainability consultant who is helping us to shape our approach in such a way as we can deliver the biggest bang for our buck as we introduce these. You will soon see green shoots emerging at some of our houses as investment is carried out. Starting, I am pleased to report, with electric car charging points at Selworthy and Freshwater Bay, where there is an absence of local charging infrastructure. We have registered for available grants at all our houses. As we move forward, we must achieve the revenues to routinely maintain the standards of our estate that you expect. We will look to prioritise the most profitable properties and seek reassurances from landlords, local authorities, and any other agencies about the flexibility we need and the location's long-term viability before making significant investments. And that is important. Finally, we need to continue to invest in our IT systems and wider infrastructure to maintain our profitability and efficiency. This will also position us for growth and improve customer experience. Work has already started and will continue apace with particular focus on guest-facing areas. Clearly, when it comes to our overall investment programme, the more funds we attract, the quicker things can be implemented, something that Malcolm has already talked about. there was strong support in the member survey for the need to attract the next generation of guests. The average age of our guests has for some time been increasing year on year. Indeed, 7 years ago, there was concern that without urgent change, HF would enter a gradual decline. Now, the good news is that the latest data does not support that picture. Sadly, anti-aging is not a new membership benefit. But what we have continued to do is to attract new and younger guests. In 2021, a year, as we heard, was very much curtailed by COVID, we had over 1,500 new guests on our guided walking holidays, and the average age of guests has started to stabilise. Whilst we must continue to refresh and review what we do, the urgency has gone, and it may be that we have reached a point of equilibrium and can celebrate who we are and who our members are. Now, this does not mean that we should avert our gaze. We recognise that family holidays and challenger holidays are a key part of our future pipeline of members. So why are people members of HF? Again, from our member survey, some 78% are members in order to support the society, because fundamentally they believe in the HF ethos. Others mention the benefits of membership as incentives to join, especially the fact that they did not need to pay a non-membership fee each time they booked a holiday, advanced reservation opportunities, partner discounts, and of course, the bar discount. They have told us that they are not particularly interested in the governance of HF, but are interested in news on holidays and what affects them. The vast majority of members, some 93%, have less than 1,000 shares, with around a quarter having less than 100 shares. Only 7% are investment members with over 1,000 shares. And one interesting difference that emerged from the survey was that the more shares a member has, the more likely they are to make further investments in the society. And whilst part of any decision to increase their investment relates to the return that they receive on their capital, their driving influence was a belief in the HF ethos and what we are. As I mentioned, the more funds we attract, the quicker our investment programme can be implemented. Malcolm has already set out the ways in which you can further support the society financially, and you'll find out more in the coming weeks and months through footnotes. So in conclusion, you, our members, have spoken. Your priorities are clear about how you would like the society to build its tomorrow. Foremost is investment in our properties to bring them up to a standard you expect, and to do so in a sustainable and environmentally friendly way as is possible. We will do this whilst continuing to deliver exciting, fresh, innovative holidays, aligned with our mission and our values. So finally, it only leaves me to second Malcolm's proposal that you vote to adopt our annual report, accounts, and auditors report for the year ended 31st of October 2021. And to thank you all very much for listening. Thank you, and back to you, Helen.
Thanks very much for that update. In the notice of this AGM, we gave members the opportunity to ask questions specifically about the agenda items at the AGM, and we have received a number of questions which relate to the accounts and our annual report. And I've just invited Malcolm, our chair of the board, to respond to them. And then I'm allowing up to 15 minutes for members in the audience to ask questions relating specifically to agenda items. Depending on the time, I think we definitely won't spend more than 15 minutes on that. If there are lots of questions, it's one question each, and we'd like you to, if you can, limit yourselves to 2 minutes. I've got my stopwatch on here in line with the way we did the video reports when we were doing everything online. But at this point, we will go to Malcolm. I'd remind you... Point of order. Could you stand up and tell us who you are?
Peter Forrest, London.
Thank you.
First of all, good to see you here in person.
Indeed.
In taking questions submitted in advance, all in one block rather than alternating, it gives the impression, unfortunately, that questions in advance are more valued than questions coming from the floor from people who perhaps travelled here for hundreds of miles, and often questions arise from the nature of the excellent presentations we've seen. And the second and related point is that there is a good chance that in taking the questions in advance, all in one block, that the time available for the questions from people here in person is squeezed. Now, I'm told by Sarah Kuchera that this 15 minutes is dictated by the IT requirements. If that is the case, then I suggest that needs to be looked at. So can I invite you, Madam President, to suggest that we alternate questions from the floor and those in advance, and also that the board take away the opportunity to widen the slot available for in-person questions.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. You always raise good points. Two things to say. First of all, it was literally an issue of convenience in terms of the block of submitted online questions. But I don't actually think it's unreasonable what you're suggesting, because we would never want all of you who've travelled to feel that in some way your questions were second class. And the 50 minutes is flexible up to a point, but actually, as you and I know, because we've been here before, you do have to remember that, you know, people are here for all sorts of reasons when they come to the AGM. So what I suggest we do, Malcolm, is you go through the first submitted questions, the first few, and respond to them, and then I'll ask people in the auditorium if they have any questions. And I will ask you to be brief and to the point in your questions, just because we do want to finish by 4. Is that a point of order? Could you excuse me, could you tell us who you are and where you come from? Indeed, indeed. Thank you very much for that. But we will not. You can't quite get this ever right when you're doing a hybrid meeting. It's a perfectly good point. But I think we'll start with the initial questions that were submitted. Then I will open it up and see if there are any questions in the hall. Looking at you, Peter, and then we will go back to the other questions. So, Malcolm, do you want to start by answering the questions that I think are going to come up here? And that you have responses to. They're quite detailed, aren't they?
Some of them are quite detailed, but I won't go through reading all the questions out in detail, and I'll try and keep fairly brief, Madam Chairman. So Anne and Jennifer asked questions around the balance sheet, and I just reiterate, because I think it's covered to some extent by my earlier presentation. You heard today we experienced a further year of loss, albeit the lesser one of 384 compared to last year. That resulted in the huge effort I mentioned, and actually, you know, the big saver in amongst that was the award of things like business rate relief and other reliefs from government, which were 1.95 million. Secondly, there was a fairly lengthy question, a set of questions here, from Nancy Ann and Suzanne about paying back loans, the question about the significant increase in cash, the Ukrainian situation, and something about UK taxation. Let me take the tax one first. She quotes a US code, which, as I understand, relates to the charitable and non-profitable organizations which are exempt in the USA from federal income taxes, and many also from state taxes as well. They can also receive unlimited contributions from people and organizations. Now, a co-op in UK is not treated so well. It still has to pay corporation tax on our surplus, and it also still has to pay VAT under the tour operators management system, like any other business. And likewise, there's the £100,000 limit on individual investment without lots of added bureaucracy. So, I mean, it's just the fact that the UK is different. No taxes were paid in 2021 as we made a loss due to COVID, but clearly in 2020 we made a surplus, and therefore we had to pay the tax that was liable. In this financial year, with all its doubts, we are actually totally on budget. We very much increased the downside risks and reduced, took very safe options about the upside opportunities. So at the moment, we're repaying our loan in monthly installments as required, absolutely, totally on budget, and we're making the surplus as per budget. Of course, the Ukraine situation is affecting confidence in our overseas bookings. To be honest, despite what you might see in the press, they really hadn't picked up from the pandemic. And the situation is just extending nervousness traveling around overseas. Nevertheless, I do think our cautious budget, is serving us in good stead. You heard me say, I believe we can repay the COVID loan out of normal operating, and as a co-op, we don't have outside funding. What we do is down to us. And I outlined our approach to how we might grow, and that included coming to you for additional investment. During this last year, various members said to me, why don't you just ask members for more money to keep the wheels on the bus? I was very much against that. I firmly believe that members' money should not go into routine operations. Members' money should be invested for growth where there is a very clear return, and that growth then feeds back into the society, and it becomes something that becomes perpetuating. Then question 3 was from Roger, and there were 2 elements of that. One was, again, more details about the COVID loan, and the other about the selling of Lulworth. I think we've said that HF obtained that 5-year loan in 2021. It was interest-free for the first year. The loan was, designed to do exactly what it said on the tin. It was a business interruption loan. So it's helped cover our operating costs when we couldn't trade, set alongside the furlough scheme, along with things like paying employees, salaries, and also suppliers. We didn't want to be an organization that survived by actually squeezing the people we rely on in the long term. And as we said in members' footnotes recently, we're paying off the £62,500 plus interest at 2% over the bank rate for what's outstanding. I keep saying we do believe that we can pay the loan out of our trading. The bank is very clear that this loan we have is in very favourable terms. It's government guaranteed. It's only 2% over base rate, and basically we wouldn't get a better deal anywhere else if we wanted it for purchasing a house or whatever. So pay it to time, pay it to budget, and do your other stuff outside. The 5-year strategy for growth developed prior to the pandemic I think, helped steer HF to a position where we've actually survived. If we'd have started this pandemic with no cash in the bank, our houses all mortgaged, as they had been many years before, I suspect we might not be here today.
Malcolm, can I just interrupt and we can perhaps go to the floor and then come back to your final questions?
Yeah,
Could we turn the lights up?
Yep. I haven't mentioned Larworth. I'll come back to Larworth at some point, if I may.
Of course. No, we'll come back to you, undoubtedly. Could we just have the lights up so that we can see if anyone's got their hand up? No, we can't. So you'll just have to put your hands up anyway. Gentleman at the back. Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you. Could you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, my name's, I don't need to stand up, do I?
No, you don't need to stand up.
I'm William Whiting, I'm from Halesowen near Birmingham. I think my question relates to, whether you feel that you can be sure, given the, the cost of living crisis that we're facing, because I think, people are going to prioritise. But do you feel that because we've got such a good product to offer, this is something that will not affect our business, but I am slightly worried that the financial position might not be as good as it is because we are facing financial difficulties across the UK. So that's my question.
Thank you very much. Nice, crisp question.
William, thank you very much. I think we're, I never say never. It does seem through this period as though every time we stood up, something else came and blew us over again. And the Putin-Ukraine thing is just the latest in a series. My instinct is that our finance team have been really good at maximising the risks and minimising the opportunities so that we have a buffer in our budget. The other thing I think that is worth saying is that before COVID, we were getting something like 70% fill rates for our houses. We're now getting 90% fill rates for our houses, and we're having to put on trails, and some of those trails are filling almost as soon as they're on the market, and we're having to find an extra set of dates. So at the moment, we're actually in a strong position, and I think there's flexibility there. What the I wish I had a crystal ball about where we're heading, but I do think we've got buffers. And at the board meeting yesterday, we did press to test to say, what are the contingencies in here? And we were very much reassured that there's lots of sort of escape routes along the way. So I think it's a cautious budget, and I think we can probably weather an element of the storm that we're probably going to get. I hope that answers that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other questions? Could you tell us who you are again? Do you want the mic, Peter?
Thank you very much. My short question is in three parts and has to do with what should be the vital objective of rebuilding and then further increasing the cash component of the balance sheet. And let's not forget, because HF was short of cash, it could have gone bust in 2020. So the three parts to my question are, how is selling property but then spending the proceeds consistent with rebuilding cash in the balance sheet? How does the board propose to strengthen the cash position of the society, given that at best the next 5 years' profits will be eaten up by the Sybil's loan repayments? And finally, how will the society meet the additional operating cash requirement, I calculate up to £10 million, when the government introduces rules to force holiday companies like HF to keep holidaymakers' monies in secure ring-fenced escrow accounts? And the importance of that is shown not only by Malcolm's graph on cash, but also note 12 to page 12 of the accounts that show that the financial position of HF in this financial year was supported by 6.4 million of shareholders' advance deposits.
Thank you very much. Those are very detailed questions, so I think it's sensible for David to come up.
Good afternoon, everyone. With reference to some of the points you've raised there, Peter, I'll try and answer some of them. With regards to trading, we see about 4 areas that we need to focus on to improve our trading, to help build our reserves and also, importantly, have that additional income to invest in the society, into the country houses that Mark's highlighted, and importantly to pay back the COVID loan. So the 4 areas that are identified is around the houses, the holidays, the offices, and the final one I would say is the guests. So if you take the 2019 figures as a benchmark, that was our last full year of normal trading as best we can, the society made over 700,000 surplus. And if you sort of have that as in your minds, that some of those improvements that we've been seeing over the last 5 years prior to that are baked into our thinking and operating, it's looking at the ways that we can try and improve our trading on top of that figure to help grow the business within that. So in terms of the guests, I think the first thing to say is the prices have gone up. It's not all to do with inflation. We have put the prices up so we can invest further into the society. The non-member fee has gone up since 2019. It's now £30, and half the guests are non-members. That's also an opportunity for us to get them to become members. So that's additional income. In terms of the houses, we are closely watching our costs. We've got additional senior team on food and beverage, on the estate, health and safety, are all helping us to manage costs. And I use that word rather than cutting costs. So we're trying to get the best prices for everything from food and energy. In terms of, in 2019, we also had one loss-making house, which was Beth Gellet, which will be no longer featuring in our future trading. In terms of the offices, we no longer have the Elstree office. I wouldn't say we've downsized, we've improved the quality of the office, but we've gone to a smaller footprint, recognising the hybrid nature of working from home and the office, and that is saving us a 6-figure sum per year. And then in terms of the actual holidays, we've got a contract manager now who is working hard on managing costs with suppliers such as transport and hotels, so that we get the best prices to improve the margins on our overseas holidays and managing the costs within the holiday operations. So we are relatively confident the way we've done our costing and forecasting, as Malcolm said in the budget, that we are aiming to increase our potential surplus to deliver a couple of those things that you've mentioned there, Peter. If I can just mention the item that you finally mentioned, which was escrow. This is something that's come on at the back of COVID, which is an issue for many travel organisations, that money's held in a trust account, or in other words, a travel company won't get a guest's payment until after the holiday and the services have been completed. And that would impact our cash flow, and that is something we're well aware of. We have not been asked to deliver that yet when we've secured our bonding with Atoll and Abtop this year, so we've not had to enter that, but the board and ourselves are very much aware of it, and that is something that we'll be working through. Having a strong balance sheet is something that we believe will help us when we have those discussions with the with the authorities. But there are several ways we can cover the escrow when it does come in, and it is a question of when it comes in. It isn't an if, it is something that's going to come post-COVID. I'll hand back to Malcolm.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Bob Gummersall. I have the privilege of being a Vice President, and so I'll take the opportunity not to ask questions, but just to make a few comments. And I would say,
that's fine. I'm going to time you, Bob.
Well, I'm wasting time doing it.
Could you just tell us where you're from, just so that we get...
I'm from Ilkley in Yorkshire.
Thank you.
So the board's strategy on growth and funding, I heartily applaud, and especially the allocation of members' finance into the houses. I think that's just the way to do it. And I'll be very happy to put another 3,000 in if that's what you're looking for. You tell me later. But and I hope lots of other members will follow that lead. A couple of words of caution, and I think the board are really very much on the right lines. We've now lost 3 houses over the last few years, and the reasons have been good, but I've always felt that if you drop below 16 houses, then it's very difficult to sustain the overhead. 16 houses or more, plus the foreign side, gives a very good balance. So I would ask the board to keep their eye on that one. And then finally, which I think is a strategic point, which is that my observation as a guest has been that the social programme in some of the houses has got a little bit moribund at times. A quiz, Skittles, and that's your lot. So could I ask the board to think a little bit more about the quality of the social programme that we're on? It's always been a key part of the magic of HF. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob. Anyone else?
Madam Chairman, maybe I just interject talking about Lulworth, because I think it fits to something that Bob said.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm just concerned about this gentleman coming down the stairs. Do you want to take the microphone up to him, and then we can come to him after you've talked about Lulworth?
When I first became chair, I looked back at all our records, and it was quite interesting to see the regular turnover of houses, some which we only had for about a year, which really surprised me. Just before I joined the board, the HF bought 4 new houses, and I was informed that there was always an intent to then weed out the least profitable in that process, and you're nodding. Would I like to have kept Lulworth? Yes, I would. Would I rather use its value of £2 million to buy Peveril? Yes, certainly, because it gives us a much better return and is much more popular than at Lulworth. So, you know, the situation at Lulworth has changed. Parking is now hugely costly and difficult. The local coach companies are finding it difficult to provide assured service. We're having particular difficulty down there with staff. The environment has changed significantly and it's not washing its face. We need to use that asset in a much more productive way. I totally agree with you. We mustn't just erode our place and follow people like CHA and Christian Guild into a total reduction overall, not least because our housing stock, I believe very firmly, is a good way of holding the monies that co-ops need in reserve in a tangible asset rather than in just cash, which you so easily can just fritter away. You do need reserves for exactly the situation which you've just been through. And if we had had all our houses mortgaged before we actually entered into this COVID crisis, we would have had no security for the government bank COVID loan. So, you know, accept everything you said, and I hope I've explained the reasoning behind Lulworth.
Thanks, Malcolm. A final question, I think, from the gentleman there.
Thank you. Paul Hudson from Billericay in Essex. Mark has mentioned that Longmynd is going to absorb quite a lot of our investment funds for the next few years. I've always seen Longmynd as a bit of an enigma because it's done very well financially, but it's a long way removed from the traditional HF country house. We know it attracts a lot of guests. Are they mainly new guests to HF? If so, do they then go on to holiday at our traditional houses, or are they traditional regular guests just sort of taking one holiday at Longmynd, or do they then go back again because they like that style of hotel? What is the future? Is Longmynd going to be something of a precedent? Are we going to be tempted to look to sort of more traditional style hotels and away from the country houses? What sort of philosophy has the board got on this?
Thank you very much for that question. I don't know, do you want to answer that?
David is nearer the data on that, so
I think David would be best on that. I like that, the enigma of Longmynd.
Thank you for the question. So with regards to Church Stretton, last year it was our second most profitable site. It normally is our most profitable and has the most visitors. It has a long season. It is quite easy to get to by public transport as well as by road. So we see it as a property that's highly successful for us. Whether it's an enigma or not, I would say several of our houses have unique features that set them apart from others. And I think it's more about where we are situated. And Church Stretton has long been a desirable place to be, and we're right in the middle of where the walks are, and it also has a great range of walks right from the doorstep. In terms of it perhaps not fitting in with an HF house, it is one of the shortcomings that Lulworth had. It didn't have enough public space, really, to fulfil one of the reasons why we came to sell it. So in terms of it looking different maybe after the refurb, we'll take in view the comments that you've said, and I think it can be a very valuable part of our country house portfolio going forward. In terms of new guests, it has the most new guests each year, basically because it's the largest property. And do they go on to book other holidays? Yes, they do, in the same volume as if you went to one of our other houses or sites. So we believe, though, that if we bring it up to the standard of our other houses, we'll get even better return from the site as well. So that's part of the reasoning that we're investing further in it.
Thank you. Malcolm, would you just like to finish the final online question that we got, because it's quite an important one?
Yeah, there was a question from Penelope Scott, curious about the legal and professional costs of nearly £500,000. Gosh, yes. I have to say that obtaining the government's business interruption loan was not the easiest of processes. If we or any other organisation had been on the edge, I don't think we could have survived the time nor the costs involved. The processes involved significant legal and auditors' costs, including dealing with a huge panoply of very detailed and complex documents. They had to have substantial input from both our auditors and our legal experts to ensure we were mitigating risks, for example, and obtaining the best possible deal. So yes, wouldn't it be nice if we got all that for free? But unfortunately, it was the cost of getting the loan primarily. And, you know, it's a one-off, really.
Thank you very much. And thank you both to you and to Mark, and actually to everyone who's submitted questions both online and in the hall. I think there was a lot of clarification and important issues raised there. So we now turn to the adoption. We vote for the adoption of the annual report, accounts and auditors report for the year ended the 31st of October 2021. If you're at home, please look at your screen and vote for, against or abstain. And for those here in Radlett, please raise your hands if you're for the adoption of the annual report. And we'll have our tellers go round. If you're against the adoption of this, that's a lucky one. And if you're abstaining. And if you're voting at home, the voting will close in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Voting for this is now closed. And I'd like to reintroduce you, Malcolm, up and down again, who will talk to us about the reappointment of our auditors, WHA.
Ladies and gentlemen, this financial year is the second year under the scrutiny of White Hart Associates. Nikki, thank you. They have again proved significant support to our teams with their substantial knowledge, their presence, and their contacts within the travel industry sector and in banking. I confirm their reappointment in accordance with our rules. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And now I hand the meeting over to you, Malcolm, to act as chair.
Well, thank you, Helen. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the appointment of our honorary officers. First on this screen is Helen Bowden, who has kindly served as our president for several years now, and who's chairing our meeting today in her customary, calm, capable, warm and wise manner, for which many thanks. We admire her for that, don't we? We are delighted that she's agreed to serve us for another year. We also presently have 5 honorary vice presidents you now see on the screen. They are all people who have contributed substantially in our history over the years, including many years on the board or as president of our society. We're again pleased that all have agreed to continue to serve. And so my task is then to ask you to confirm the election of our honorary officers. And as before, if you're at home, please look at your screen and vote for, against, or abstain. And for those of you with us here, please raise your hand if you are for. If you are against, or if you wish to abstain. At home, your online voting will end in 10 seconds. So the countdown, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the voting for this is now closed. And I hand back to you, Helen.
Thank you, Malcolm. And now may I introduce you to Elaine Barclay, a board member and chair of the People Committee.
Thank you, Helen, and good afternoon, everyone. I have the pleasure of announcing the successful candidates elected to our board by our members. Before I do that, however, I would like to outline some of the work the People Committee has done this board year to ensure that the Board of HF Holidays is as effective as possible in guiding our society to serve its members in the best possible way. We are conscious that an effective board is a diverse board and requires directors with a mix of skills and experience who understand our society and who are willing to work together to support HF Holidays achieve the strategic goals set by the board. In order to enhance our board performance, we have undertaken training on cooperatives, finance, and chairing this board year, and we have carried out a board effectiveness survey and individual director reviews. In preparation for the election, we also carried out a skills and experience audit to identify gaps which we hope might be filled by new directors. We shared with members on the website and via footnotes the particular skills and experience priorities for filling places on the board and asked our members to be mindful of this when making their selections. This year, we had 7 candidates apply for the Board of Directors, including 2 serving board members applying for re-election for a second term, and a former board member who has served as both chair and vice chair. Recently, Steve Bishop, a much valued member of our board, resigned. We are very sad to see him go, as he brought both warmth and financial acumen to the board. As he is moving on, therefore, we now have 4 vacant places on the board, the 4th place being for the 2-year residual portion of Steve's term. I can confirm that over 2,600 members voted in the election. Votes were confirmed in accordance with our rules by 3 independent scrutineers from our external election company, Civica Election Services. And we are delighted to announce that Ben Reid, Keith Sellons, and Steve Swift have been appointed for a 4-year term, and Davina Venkatasamy for a 2-year term, the residual portion of Steve's term. Their appointments commence from this meeting. We should like to extend congratulations and a very warm welcome to the HF Board, to Keith and Davina, and to welcome back Steve Swift after a year's absence. Finally, we are delighted that Ben Reid has been re-elected for a 2nd term. Ben brings to the board a lifetime of knowledge, experience, and understanding of the cooperative movement at the very highest level, together with expertise in financial strategy. Full results of the election will be shown on the HF website in the week following this AGM. We commiserate with the candidates who were not elected this year and thank them for their commitment to HF Holidays, and we do hope that they will apply again. Thank you. I should now like to hand back to Mark.
Point of order?
I certainly remember within recent years voting members of 3,500 plus, and we seem to have an enigma, if I could use that word, that...
You have to
as our
speak into the
membership is going
microphone,
up,
Peter.
Our voting numbers are coming down. Has that been looked at?
Do you want to just ask that again into the microphone, because no one at home can hear you?
I'm sorry. I certainly remember within recent years voting numbers of 3,500 plus, and our membership numbers have been going up and up, but it looks as though our voting numbers are going down and down. Has HF been exploring why this is?
I think it's something you're looking at, isn't it? Do you want to just answer that, Elaine?
Thank you, Peter. It is correct. We probably had over 3,000 in previous years. I don't have an honest answer to the reasons. The member survey did show that many members were less interested in the governance of the society, as Mark alluded to in his speech, but it's something we'll look into. The only other factor that is in our minds is a few years ago we used to give a prepaid envelope for voting, and now we do all the voting either with a postage that you have to pay for yourself on the envelope, or you go online, and we're obviously driving more digital work in this area. So it's something we'll look at, we'll take it away. Obviously all the votes are secret, so we don't know who's voted and so on, but we'll try and see if we can get to the bottom of some of those answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Now over to Mark.
Thank you, Elaine. Ladies and gentlemen, with a mixture of sadness and a great deal of gratitude, time has now come for me to thank the directors who are leaving us at this AGM. If you'll indulge me for a few minutes, I'd like to say a few words about our three retiring directors, Malcolm Oliver, Stephen Guile, and Steve Bishop. Malcolm, as chair, you brought to the board a wealth of personal experience, skills, and attributes from which we and the society have all benefited. This unique combination enabled you to speak the languages of our members, our staff, and also the board. You were able to focus on the right issues, to do the right thinking, and have the right conversations. And where difficult decisions were required, you ensured that these were not only based on the best information available, but also that all voices were heard. On behalf of all our members, I would like to thank you for your 6 years on the board, and in particular, your time as chair. Thank you. Stephen, your knowledge and expertise in all things governance has been invaluable. Your deep insight, combined with your ability to explain and communicate what are sometimes difficult concepts, enabled you to guide the response of the society to a number of long-standing governance issues, and in doing so, truly professionalise our approach. Stephen, on behalf of members, thank you. And last, but certainly not least, I would like to extend the Society's thanks to Steve. Now, Steve isn't with us today, but I know he's looking through that camera on there, so he has joined us online. Steve is a past head of finance for HF Holidays, and in his second term as a board member, Steve brought both history and challenge to our thinking. And when it comes to the numbers, Steve, you have few equals, and your forensic analysis will be sorely missed. We wish all three of you the very best for the future, and to borrow a phrase from Strictly, and with apologies to Tess and Claudia, keep walking. And now, back to you, Helen.
Thank you. So the voting is complete, and as the votes are being ratified, our Chief Executive, David Harrington, who's already starred on this stage, is going to update us how he and his remarkable team are planning to build the tomorrow of HF Holidays with an aspirational new strategy for growth. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Helen. During the pandemic, I've been on screen so much, I feel I need now an equity card, and now I'm on the stage. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. Following Malcolm's and Mark's presentation, I wanted to update you with progress towards our strategic goals in areas not already covered by either Malcolm or Mark. Before that, though, I wish to give an apology. I am aware that in certain areas we have not delivered the service levels we aspire to. Firstly, at the offices, we have struggled sometimes to keep up with the high levels of calls and demands on our team, especially when COVID measures started to relax. This was also compounded by a website glitch, which is now being corrected. We have recruited more team members for our front line, and we continue to monitor service levels. Secondly, at our houses, like many in the hospitality sector, we have found that staffing has been a huge issue and remains so mainly due to Brexit compounded by COVID. Last year, at some houses, we had to cap or cancel a few holidays to ensure our team were rested. This impacted about 5% of our departures. This year, we have capped some holidays to avoid being in a situation of having to cancel. We hope to remove caps when our staffing levels support this, and are working hard to address the staffing challenges with a major recruitment drive, improvement in live-in staff accommodation, additional appointments in our HR department, and a stronger move towards flexible working at the houses. Sadly, a few issues still remain, and COVID is now raising its head again, but we hope they are going to be considerably fewer than last year. Since we last met in person, much has happened. Not just COVID, but Brexit, inflation, petrol and other shortages, and now, sadly, troubling events in Europe. Our growth plans have had to be modified to reflect the context, but our mission statement of active, social and outdoors remains relevant and appreciated more than ever. To move us forward, the 9 strategic goals that we created a few years ago are still valid. And Malcolm and Mark have highlighted some in their updates, but I wish to share progress on others. Our product team is working hard on new holidays and ideas, both UK and overseas. Our tread lightly walking holidays from our houses with no transport were ideal post-lockdown breaks, but they are now a valuable addition to our range of walking holidays. Over 1,200 guests booked a tread lightly guided holiday last year. Some of our houses are not suitable for such horseshoe walks, but many of our houses are, and we will continue to develop these popular green holidays. In a similar vein, our gentle guided walking breaks have proved successful with 3 easier walks a day. Self-guided walking has been popular, and we believe our centre-based holidays offer a real USP compared to competitors with a social experience to boot. We will continue to develop these holidays, which we noted were very popular last year with regular HFers as well as new guests. Trail and island hopping holidays continue to beat all records. We add more dates and they sell out. New holidays have been launched and it seems members love them. We have added now centre-based holidays at non-HF houses at Skye and the Wye Valley, and both are nearly sold out. We have already secured the dates for 2023, and we continue to look for new locations. As part of our exceptional experience, we are running holidays to coincide with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Plenty of royal-themed events will be taking place at our houses, including royal afternoon tea and cakes on arrival day to celebrate the Jubilee, and weather permitting, these will be in the gardens. During the course of the weekend, we will ensure a lounge or an event room is set up to show televised events. And of course, there'll be a themed HF quiz with a royal round. There will be more surprises, and I wouldn't be doing my sales job if I didn't say there were still a few places left to book. Overseas travel has taken a big hit over the last 2 years, and we hope to see a return in 2022 and certainly for 2023, particularly for long haul. We have kept in touch with our hotels and transport companies so we could restart when safe to do so. One significant issue, though, has been flight availability, as airlines have struggled to operate to pre-pandemic timetables. Fortunately, we do have good relationships with scheduled airlines, and we will keep clients informed if there are any changes. We are hoping that these will reduce now there is growing normality in the industry. We are also looking at introducing more overseas trips using the train. On the topic of the strategic goal, introduce smarter processes, as Malcolm highlighted, we continued investment and development of our IT systems despite lockdowns, and in November launched a new tour operator system which included a reservation system. And I stress the words tour operator, as it provides considerably more functionality to help us with many areas of work and will improve reporting and will link better to our other IT systems. We have introduced a new purchase order system and recently a procurement system, and replaced the EPOS software that operates our tills at the houses. This new software also enables house management to do a weekly return online rather than using the old pen and paper. Our reporting now also tells us what you eat and what you like. You are healthier than I thought, because you like fish being the popular main dish, and 25% of you prefer fruit salad rather than jam, roly-poly and custard. Now, this data will help us with menu planning, and from April, all menus now must show calories. Maintenance work at our houses is now recorded on software. And noting the rise of hybrid working, we have continued to invest in technology to support our team with working from home and the office. Mark referred to our strategic goal of protect and grow our assets. Our wonderful houses are one of our key assets, and we have invested in additional team to support this area of the strategy, with 2 colleagues now focusing on health and safety, plus we have an estate manager. Staff accommodation has been a priority this past winter, with us spending over £120,000 improving facilities at Church Stretton, Dovedale, Brecon and Selworthy. Leader accommodation has also been approved at Freshwater Bay and Selworthy. HF has continued to support good projects from the Pathways Fund, including several local mountain rescue teams local to our houses who have benefited mainly for essential equipment. In February, we hosted a feel-good break for disadvantaged families in association with the Family Holiday Charity. The weekend break was at Dovedale, and from the reports, the children and parents had a fantastic time. One of the videos shown while you were in the waiting virtual room, or as you sat in the theatre perhaps earlier, was from one of the families. Our community support continues with hosting the recent Outsiders Summit at Derwent Bank, and we continue to work with a local outreach charity who are developing part of the garden at Whitby. This year, we also became a patron of the Ramblers Association. On the strategic goal of drive sustainability, we are doing 2 major pieces of work, which members will hear about in the next few months. Over the winter, we have been measuring our carbon footprint across all our houses, offices and holidays. We are even monitoring the carbon footprint of all our UK walks. This should be complete soon, and with our consultant Soraya, We will create a sustainability plan with actions and a timeline. We are also looking at starting a journey towards B Corp certification. HF already does a lot towards sustainability. However, it needs to be joined up and put into a clear policy going forward. The second area of work is around diversity and inclusion. This is something I'm personally interested in and how HF can help make a difference. It is at the very centre of all that is HF, and I am sure that if T.A. Leonard was still around, he would be at the forefront of championing this cause. Again, to support us, we are working with a consultant, Anila, who is experienced in this area, and her report in a few weeks' time will help guide us on our next steps. We have already been a supporter of the Outsiders Summit, which we hosted at Derwent Bank last September, along with outdoor clothing supplier Patagonia. By supporting this, there has already been a change in diversity policy in several national outdoor organisations, such as Swim England and British Cycling, who attended the event. We are hosting a second summit with different bodies attending this year. From this brief summary and from the speeches shared by Malcolm and Mark, I hope it is clear that there is plenty going on. A key focus remains listening to feedback from our guests in order to continue to enhance the holiday experience. We are extremely proud to be a Which-escorted holiday provider voted for independently by Which subscribers. Last year, nearly 5,800 holiday questionnaires were returned, an increase of 28% on 2019, which shows also the growth in digital. When I am asked what is the favourite HF house from the feedback, it's so hard to say. But I can tell you what you, the guests, thought were your favourites. So let's take a little sample. What's the best breakfast? Well, it was Abingworth or Sedbergh. And if you wanted the best packed lunch, you're going to have to go to Glencoe. And then if you want the best walks, it's Coniston. And then to freshen up after a day's walking, and the best bedroom, it's Brecon, or you could try Malham or Derwentwater. And if you want the best evening meal, well, it's Dovedale, but it's served by the staff from Bourton-on-the-Water. Our holidays are unique and special, built around those strong links to social, active, and outdoors. We are at heart a people business, and I give my thanks to all members who have supported us, to leaders and field advisors for doing what they do brilliantly, to colleagues in houses and offices for their hard work and commitment, to our honorary officers for their support, and to the board for their guidance and dedication. The last few years have been challenging. HF was built on firm foundations, and we are now building our tomorrow. Thank you.
So I'd now like to welcome Sarah Kachera, the Head of Governance and Society Secretary, who has verified the voting at this AGM.
Thank you very much, Helen. I'm very happy to confirm that I verified the voting at the annual general meeting today, and I can confirm that the procedures hosted by StreamGo for the voting by virtual attendees and the in-person voting protocols at the Radlett Centre have facilitated a fair and transparent voting process. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So for a resolution to pass, it must achieve a simple majority in support, which I have to say there was a simple majority in favour of this orange jumper. I shall move on. 94% of you. Thank you very much. To confirm the minutes of the 107th Annual General Meeting held on the 10th of April 2021, the number for 235, the number against 0, the numbers who abstained 41%, so the percentage was 100% for, which means the vote was carried. For the annual report vote, the adoption of the annual report, accounts and auditors' reports, the number for 278, the number against 0, the number abstained 8, so that was a percentage of 100%, which means that was also carried. The election of the honorary officers, the number for, 276, the number against, 5, the number abstained, 10, the percentage for, 98.2%, which means the vote was carried. And that's it. We've come to the end of the meeting. It's whizzed by. Thank you so much for your company, both at home and here. The next annual general meeting takes place on the 1st of April 2023. That's a bit ominous. But seriously, we're so pleased to see so many of you, and we do appreciate those of you who have travelled, particularly a long way to get here. But we're equally pleased that there are people at home who've given up their afternoon to join us and keep the organisation that we love so much going. So thank you very much. And on that note, I can confirm that we have completed the business, and I declare the meeting closed. And I think you should give yourselves a round of applause.